I was a volunteer in primary school in Kenya, and my first teaching experience was being put in front of a class with no preparation. I think it was around 25 students who all had a limited command of English, and I remember being scared, feeling awkward, and feeling slightly ridiculous. My first time teaching composition was about 4 months ago, and it was with a co-teacher who had the main responsibility for the class. So I don't really count that as my first experience of teaching composition. I would count it as perhaps the first day where I had the class on my own. Most of the fear and awkwardness had gone by then, since I knew the kids pretty well at that point, and I had planned the day in a lot of detail. But still, I was afraid that they would question my exercise or find it pointless, which one of them did. But I think most of the students actually acted according to plan. I try to consider what my future first teaching experience will be when I return to Denmark and start teaching literature, I hope, and how I can make use of what I'm learning here when I return there. I mean, the content obviously will be very different if I succeed in becoming a literature teacher. And even if I do teach composition at the University of Copenhagen, where I expect to go back to, the approach is just very different, because the first year writing course is course specific, so they'll all be in the English discipline, and won't have varying majors. On the other hand, the discipline of English comprises both language, literature, and history. So I do think that I'll be able to use some of what I teach here, which will be something like attention to the differing conventions across disciplines, and just generally a rhetorical approach to what you write. I don't think that I can point to one person, or one theory at this stage. If I'd been asked this question before I came here, before this semester, I would probably have tried to pick somebody, some teacher I admire from the past, or even some of the teachers I have here at ISU. But I think that at the moment, my teaching is much more shaped by the discussions I have as part of my teaching composition class, and even more so by the conversations I've had with my co-teacher and my other peers during the semester. I mean, even though I still occasionally try to compare myself with the teachers from my past and present that I admire, I think I've become much more focused on analyzing my own classroom experience and try figuring out who I was and what I was doing when things worked out and felt comfortable. I have learned that they will never read an assignment the way I think they will. And I have learned that when they say that they understand something that I'm saying, I should probably ask them what it is that they understand, instead of just assuming that it fits with what I think or what I want them to understand. As an outsider to American culture, I have learned a lot of interesting details that I kind of appreciate, or I don't know, that I can put in a bag and take back home with me. I have learned what s'mores is. I have learned the rules and tactics of basketball, at least in theory. And I have learned what it takes physically to be a cheerleader. I have also learned what incredibly varied and experienced people my students are, and how much they can write if they're allowed to use themselves as sources. At the moment, I would say it's a battle between the voices in my head that echo the comments I've been given as a student myself. A battle between that and my impression of the students in class, the voice of my co-teacher, my peers, and the theory I've read, and then the wording of the grading rubric I have to use. Responding to student writing is something I really want to be good at, because the comments I've gotten, at least since I started taking my writing seriously, has mattered a lot to me. I work as a tutor as well, and I think it's really hard to respond to something on the spot, especially because I myself take a long time figuring out what it is I'm trying to say when I'm trying to say something in writing, and and speaking occasionally. Um, what I really want to learn how to do is respond in a way that will get the student engaged with the paper instead of me telling them what might work. I agreed with a lot of what Nancy Summers' essay on responding to student writing said. It made a lot of sense to me, but I still find it hard to enact because even though I see her point about sticking to higher order concerns when you're responding to drafts, I also feel bad about not commenting on language because I know that my students will be faulted for having language errors when they write in other contexts. And that's the end.